Hello, everybody. Welcome into our Dog Nation post-game show presented by the UGA bookstore. My name is Brandon Adams. I am in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. You see Bryant-Denny Stadium off in the distance behind me. Back in Georgia, we've got the great former Georgia wide receiver Terrence Edwards, where obviously we are disappointed tonight in a game by the UGA bookstore. Georgia really stood toe-to-toe with Alabama for most of the first half. Some thrilling plays, a first-half lead. And yet in the early going of the second half, there's some dynamic plays from Alabama offensively, a couple of key Georgia turnovers, and the rest would be history in the final couple stanzas here in this game tonight. Terrence, I'm curious to get your thoughts. I'm obviously really disappointed. There's a lot to try to process by all of this. I mean, I don't think any Georgia fan had any misgivings that going on the road to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, was going to be a tremendous challenge for UGA. I don't think anybody was necessarily surprised, by that, and yet, when you see Georgia weather the storm of, seeing Alabama get off to a 7-0 lead, the way that Georgia bounced back to take the lead, I think there was a lot of hope that this game would go different in the second half than it did. Terrence, what do you think went wrong tonight for UGA?
I think just the second half, Nick Saban made his adjustments and they did some different stuff that created some turnovers that was unfortunate, and they took control of that. And I mean, when you lose a turnover about a game, you normally are going to lose the game, and that's what happened tonight.
I mean, listen, I truly believe that Georgia's got a great defense, and I knew that the definition of great defense would be challenged against Alabama because they do so much with Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith, great receivers. Mitchie, who's kind of come in, is kind of also coming to his own. I knew all of that. I guess one of my big takeaways here, Terrence, is that I'm not quite so sure that you can expect great defense to stop great offense anymore. That as great as Georgia's defense is, and it's the kind of defense that could help Georgia win a national championship. Even after losing this game tonight, there's no end-of-season goal for Georgia that it's any different than it was. But I think Alabama demonstrated again that at the highest level, at the sport when it's played at the very highest level, these games are determined by the offensive playmakers. I think Georgia's getting there. We'll get to some examples of that tonight, of guys who seem to be ready to come into their own in terms of really providing some dynamic play for Georgia. But in a matchup of great defense versus great offense, whether it be because of the rules, whether it be because of the way the rules are officiated, or just whatever else, this is a sport where great offense just seems to beat great defense right now. And as great as Georgia's defense is, I do think we just almost sort of have to accept that as being true, don't we?
I think so. I think the Georgia defense played well, even giving up, 41 points. I think they played tremendous. I think I was telling someone earlier, we're not going to stop these offenses these days. We just hope to contain them and limit their big plays. And they got two big plays with Mitchie, a 40-yard touchdown at the beginning of the game. Then Water got the 91-yarder. Those are big plays that we just got to limit. They can move the ball, and we did well of stopping them, giving them a punting opportunity or a field goal. But you're going to have to score points in today's game to win national championships and have a defense like ours. But we got to have an offense that can score.
Well, I agree with something that you just said a moment ago. Really, even with Alabama having some success moving the football, scoring some points, if you want to look at the first half of this game, I thought the Georgia defense had done its job. Alabama still scored 20, which is obviously on pace for a pretty dynamic scoring output. But Georgia forced 3 punts, 2 field goal attempts. Georgia was limiting some of the Alabama opportunities. It just became an issue in the second half of the game, either because of turnovers or whatever else. Georgia, I think, not able to keep pace with some of those big, explosive Alabama moments. And, it is an amazing transformation. If you want to go back to 2017, when they brought in that freshman crop of receivers, Jerry Jeudy and Devontae Smith, who's still here, Henry Ruggs. This Alabama program really transformed. People want to, give Lane Kiffin the credit for that as the offensive coordinator, or Tua Tagovailoa the credit for that, becoming the quarterback for this team. But Terrence, as someone who knows the receiver play, I think you would say that if you look at what has separated this version of Nick Saban's teams over the last few years from what they were, a few years ago, certainly in the early stages of the Saban era, it's how much better they've gotten at wide receiver. They just seem to collect that position year after year after year. I think that Georgia has really upgraded its wide receiver recruitment the last couple of cycles. Flipping George Pickens from Auburn mattered. Flipping Jermaine Burton from LSU mattered. Those are recruiting wins at the receiver position that Georgia didn't used to have, and they enabled Georgia to stay close tonight for a while. But unfortunately, there are still more dynamic playmakers in Crimson than there are in Silver Britches, at least on this particular night.
You're absolutely right. Back in the day when it was more of a ground and pound and just blooded your nose on the offensive line. You only really had maybe one dynamic receiver in that receiver called Julio Jones and a few more back in the day. But now you got to have three or four guys like that that just scares you. And Devontae Smith, I mean, he is a heck of a player. I give it to him. And Waddle, speed just bring a different dynamic to the game. So you got to have that. I mean, you got to have a offensive playmaker like Steve Sarkisian to draw up and dial up these plays to get those guys open. And one thing that I did notice was when they did a lot of the switch releases and the stat releases, the Georgia secondary didn't handle it well, and that goes back to communication.
Yeah, so let me ask you about that because I noticed that too. And I'm not an X's and O's guy. I'm not a former player like you, but it did seem like that Alabama was really good at getting the one-on-one matchups that it wanted. It's almost like a basketball thing where you're switching on defense and all of a sudden you're kind of stuck. It seemed like a couple times Georgia got stuck with an unfavorable matchup there. Alabama finding a way to really exploit man coverage, which, the best teams in the SEC are going to be able to do. The best I could tell, it seemed like a very, very impressive game plan from Steve Sarkisian, the Alabama offensive coordinator tonight, because they were either constantly taking advantage of man coverage. They're running those, Georgia fans might call them pick plays. Alabama fans would call them rub routes. They're running those to perfection where it just seemed like there was an Alabama guy breaking free. And, on crossing patterns and things like that, it did seem like this Georgia secondary, which is almost always up to the task against anyone, tonight they just kind of found themselves chasing Bama receivers a lot. Would you mind kind of explaining to us kind of how it got to that point for Georgia?
So film study tells you a lot, and Steve Sarkisian did a great job, and he knew what the Georgia secondary would do. And in the combo, when they say they're having a combo route, that means you're going to have an inside defender and an outside defender. If the first defender goes inside, the inside defender gets him, and the second receiver goes outside, the cornerbacks get them. So you can see them doing switcher releases now. So that's just communication that they knew that Georgia secondary didn't communicate well, or they wanted to create leverage. And by what I mean by leverage is with the switch releases, they're gonna get a outside corner on an inside breaking route, and that's why Water hit that post, because they had the second guy going to the post and the first guy going to the post, and they were reading that safety. And it happens that miscommunication, the safety jumped the first post, and Water hit us for a 91-yarder.
All right, I want to talk a lot about Stetson Bennett here too, because that's obviously what a lot of people are mentioning. Dante Edie in our Facebook comment section. We're going to go to YouTube, get a bunch of comments over there too. Bill Summer kind of also talking about some of the stuff involving Stetson Bennett as well. So there's a lot of Stetson Bennett questions coming in. And obviously some of the picks tonight from Bennett were costly. Some folks mentioning the balls being batted down at the line of scrimmage. We know that Stetson Bennett's not the tallest quarterback in the world. And one of the things I'll give Nick Saban credit for is, while I do think his in-game impact is probably a little bit overblown, his preparation during the week is clearly crucial to Alabama's success. And it seemed like the Alabama defensive players were ready to utilize their size, their wingspan. By the way, LeBron Ray doesn't even play tonight, and still a good night for Alabama defensively. But in the midst of all of this, there's a lot of balls batted down tonight, right? I thought the Alabama defense did a good job on that. Some of that's going to be kind of pointed back to Stetson Bennett on exactly how that goes down, exactly why that happens. Here's the thing, though, Terrence, you can nitpick with Stetson Bennett's performance tonight if you want to, and obviously there were some moments in which Bennett could have been better. But I don't get the impression, and we've already seen JT Daniels' name mentioned in the comment section, I don't get the impression that JT Daniels is walking through that door. I don't get the impression that right now Daniels is either healthy enough or ready enough, whatever word you want to use, way you want to describe this. I don't get the impression right now that JT Daniels is like a play away from getting in this game for whatever reason. I just don't quite see that going down. So I guess give me the evaluation of Stetson Bennett here. How do you think that goes down? What you'd like to have seen better for him? And, I guess what it is that Stetson Bennett still provides to UGA.
He still provides a game manager, and I think a lot of people would like to use that as a negative term, but he managed the game very well in the first half. That 2-minute drive to hit Jermaine on his first touchdown, congratulations to him. That was a masterful drive. So he played well in the first half. Second half, Alabama made their adjustments, and you just know that that's Alabama. We cannot make those mistakes. if we're going to keep pace with their offense. And he made especially two costly turnovers. And that third interception, I have no idea where he was going with that ball. And that was just bad turnovers led to 14 points for them. And that really kind of, opened up the floodgates, and we couldn't recover after that.
I'm going to get some YouTube comments in a moment, but David West, watching on Facebook, says that not that much has changed over the course of the last few years, referencing the end of the Mark Richt era. And listen, Terrence, I'm not going to sugarcoat tonight. You're a Georgia alumnus. You played at Georgia. I've been following this team my whole life. Obviously, this stinks tonight. This is so disappointing tonight. But in the midst of all of this, I mean, I see a team that's clearly, improved its level of play over the last few years. That's clearly, very close to the biggest and best wins that college football can provide. I'm not going to try to tell you that everything's great and rosy tonight, because Georgia obviously lost a very disappointing football game. But I would say that you're caught up in emotion if you think, oh, it's just the same old Georgia from whatever year you want to go back and point to. When you see the way that Georgia's performed the last couple of years, when you see some of the things that they're able to do tonight, I can't join Georgia fans in saying that basically all is hopeless and nothing is going on for the positive. I can't join and say that.
Oh, me either. I saw a lot of positive out there. I thought our defense played well. I thought our offense played well in the first half. I think Todd Monken did a great job of utilizing his personnel. I would like to see George Pekin get more involved in the offense, get more targets. But I think he utilized. I think he called a great game. We just didn't in the second half. We just didn't execute what we did in the first half, and those turnovers, those two interceptions, are that's big. That's taking points off the board.
DJ Rich DeVille says close ain't enough, BA. This is on YouTube, and I'll grant you that. I mean, listen, I'm not going to tell a Georgia fan that's like super mad, frustrated, angry. I'm not going to tell you to not feel that way. I guess what I want to try to do, if at all possible, is to sort of take the good with the bad. There's a very good chance that Georgia gets a chance to rematch with this team coming up in December. Georgia's going to take care of some of its business to get there. We're going to talk more about that over the course of our program. And there's some things that Georgia's doing well that gives it a chance to kind of be in that spot. So we'll continue to take your comments on this and continue to try to figure all of this out tonight. And by the way, great work on hand for the folks who are trying to keep some light shed on me, so I won't be completely in the dark here in the middle of the night in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, as we continue to roll on our Dog Nation post-game show presented by the UGA Bookstore. Huge thanks to the UGA Bookstore for making all of this possible. We really appreciate them. By the way, if you're in and around Athens, stop by and see the UGA Bookstore. They're open 7 days a week there, so all those great brands that make that great-looking UGA apparel, you can get that at the UGA Bookstore. And if you can't be in Athens, if you're not getting a chance to go to games this year, the good news is as we come up on the holiday season, all that shopping time of year, you can shop anytime, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year online, UGAbookstore.com. Make sure you check them out. All right, let's get a few more comments. Let's do some YouTube stuff here as I go completely in the dark here for a moment. Let me see if I can come a little closer so people can see me. Our light's kind of going out here. We may have to put some headlights on me in a second. As the lights are definitely having some trouble here. So let me get some comments here for a moment. Aaron Anderson, a little bit worried about the Kentucky game right now. We'll talk more about the scheduling stuff for Georgia in a little bit. But Kentucky pretty clearly was impressive today with the way they played against Tennessee. Terrence, we'll do more of this before we're done, but I think there's an argument to be made that Georgia actually kind of benefits now from having that week off, getting a chance to, get a rest up after this Alabama game to kind of get ready for that Kentucky game, play Florida in a couple of weeks. A little bit of a schedule shift here, but I think there's an argument made that Georgia's actually in pretty good shape, kind of thinking about that, getting a chance to have this week off now. In a weird way, it actually might come at an okay time.
Yes, it is. It works both ways. You get a week off, you get to heal some of the injured players. They get to kind of reset their mind and their focus. And on the other hand, it's like we got to have this loss in the back of our head for 2 weeks. I think a lot of players I know would like to just go out there the next week and try to get a victory and get this stink off you. But now they got to get back to the drawing board. They got to have a good week of practice, that knowing that they got 2 weeks till Kentucky. But I think that this coaching staff and this leadership is going to get those guys back on the field. So our goals are still intact, and let's continue to push forward.
So I'm clearly in the dark here now. our lighting setup working at Bryant-Denny Stadium about as well as the Georgia team did there in the second half there. We may have to just use some headlights here so folks can kind of see me and we can get this going. We may have to just put the vehicle in front of us and do a little headlight here. We may have to do that. Mike Harvey says we got blown out. That's not being close. Yeah, I'm not going to sugarcoat this for any Georgia fan who wants to be very upset by what he saw tonight. That's fine. Huey Freeman says Stetson Bennett's limitations got exposed. His lack of a deep ball is a major problem. We cannot beat Bama, Clemson, or Ohio State with him at quarterback. We're going to have to make a change. I guess here's the only question I would ask you on that is, if you're planning on making a change, like who are you going to make a change to? I mean, as I said before, while Kirby Smart has said that JT Daniels is cleared for play, we haven't heard one word about Daniels since then. I mean, I would be left to question just how healthy he really is on the heels of all of that. And obviously, Dwan Mathis deserves another chance here at some point in time. But there was a change made from Mathis to Bennett for a reason. So all I'm asking you is, if you want to be disappointed with Stetson Bennett or not, you have every right to feel that way. And I'm not going to stop you from making the evaluation. But if you are in a rush to move Stetson Bennett off the field and bring somebody else in place of him, you have to ask the question, who's that going to be? Because, right now, Stetson Bennett would appear to have clearly distanced himself from the other quarterbacks in the Georgia roster. Some of you don't want to hear this, but it's true, is that Georgia would have been in a lot worse position in the last 3 games that it played had it not had Stetson Bennett, because of the fact that Jamie Newman opted out, because of the fact that apparently JT Daniels was never quite as healthy as maybe we were led to believe going back a couple of months ago. So you can be disappointed with the way that Bennett played tonight, but if you're in a hurry to push him out, the question you have to ask yourself is, and replace him with who? Or whom, or whatever the proper tense is. You have to ask that question, and that's where you're going to run into a little bit of trouble. And that's where I'm not going to let Bennett just be trashed all night long in the comment section, because in some cases it completely and totally lacks all context.
Well, exactly. I don't think it's time to bench Stetson. Yes, he does have limitations. I think Alabama did a great job this week in practice. Just if you can't get to rush, he's a 5'11" quarterback. Get your hands up, and we saw he couldn't find the passing lanes tonight. That is a give kudos to Nick Saban and their staff for doing that, put that in the game plan. I thought, like you say, we could be disappointed in him tonight. My disappointment comes in those 2 interceptions. Those are unlike him. He haven't showed us the tendency to throw bad interceptions like that. So let's not rush the judgment. Let's not rush to kick him out. Like you said, who we're going to put in. And like you, I'm very close to the program. I haven't heard anything about JT Daniels at all. And so I'll tend to leave that he's not yet ready to play. He's cleared, but they're not comfortable with him going in just yet.
Let me ask you about a Frank Patterson comment here on our YouTube comment section. Frank says he thought that Georgia abandoned the run tonight. It was one of those interesting games where in the first couple of series, Georgia doesn't attempt a running play at all, even though Alabama had given up nearly 300 yards rushing to against Ole Miss last week. Georgia was slow to try to establish the run, and then at times tonight seemed to just settle for the pass as opposed to trying to establish the run. What would you attribute that to, Terrence?
I thought they did a great job running game. We ran the ball 30 times for an average of 4.8 yards a carry. So I thought we could have continued to run the ball. I think all bats, man, Kendall Milton, he's going to be another one of those greats. And I got to give Zamir White some love today. I think I was hard on him last week and didn't think he played well. Found out that he was a little nicked up, but he looked fresh tonight. He had a great burst tonight. He ran very hard. So I'm going to give him credit. I mean, 10 carries for 57 yards, and that's a 5.7 average. He played well tonight. So kudos to that O-line. Kudos to all the backs went out there and played well. So I think we can rely on the running game against Kentucky and use the running game to set up the pass.
Cody Taylor on Facebook says, I'm sick to my stomach. I mean, that was a bad loss for us. It'll hurt our recruiting. We got to get over the Bama hump. And look, I clearly understand the sick to the stomach feeling. Goodness knows I've sat here and done a lot of these post-game shows after disappointing Alabama losses. I don't believe this is going to hurt UGA recruiting. I think that Georgia recruiting is on certainly plenty of firm footing. And some of the Georgia commits and Georgia targets will be as optimistic about this as anybody. But I'm not going to tell a Georgia fan tonight who says he's sick to his stomach or who's she says that she's sick to her stomach, guys, gals alike. I'm not going to tell them not to feel that way, Terrence, because I think we've all kind of been there and we've all experienced that, to a certain extent. I do understand where that's coming from.
I do too. I don't think it's going to hurt the recruiting and all of that. And history shows that we've been with Bama 1-2 in the recruiting world, and we haven't beat them in, I guess, the last 11 tries, and it haven't hurt our recruiting in the past. So it's definitely not going to hurt the recruiting now. I mean, I think recruits see that the fire and passion that Kirby has for this team, and um, they play hard. I mean, I think 2 turnovers is the turning point of this game that opened the floodgates. And if we don't have those 2 turnovers, I think there is still a game. So we limit those, and who knows what the outcome of this game would be.
Jody Spain checks in to say the running backs look great. You got to balance it out by finding your best wide receivers, especially number one. And I think Jody's right there, Terrence. And I know you kind of referenced this a little earlier that near the end of the first half, Georgia seemed to make a concerted effort, or at least appeared that way, to get George Pickens involved. And there's that, leading up to the the Burton touchdown, there's a couple of big catches by Pickens. And, Pickens is the exact kind of player that if you're Georgia, you want more of in a game like this. This is, high-level receiver. It's a flip from Auburn. Burton, kind of a flip from LSU. Those are some of your big recruiting wins at the receiver position. And near the end of the first half, near the end of the second quarter, Georgia was, getting both those guys involved in some kind of big plays. And there just wasn't enough of that tonight, was there?
It wasn't. It wasn't. I think there's a couple of key misses that we had in the passing game. I think we really got to get George involved more. He's too talented not to have at least 8 to 10 targets his way a night. He's too talented. I think Jermaine is coming along in his third college game. He had a good night tonight against one of the best teams in the country in a hostile environment. I think Kieris needs to be more involved, but I think the running game is probably where we should have leaned on a little bit more tonight, because the offensive line was creating holes and our backs were hitting the holes and creating positive yards.
Talmadge Stovall says wide receivers couldn't get open last year. It's the same thing this year. I just see examples, Terrence, though, where I do see receiver play right now that is superior to what it was a year ago. It wasn't enough to be an Alabama team. Night really wasn't even, enough to stay close with Alabama in the second half. But I see lots of examples where offensively, this is an upgrade for Georgia through 4 games, even the bad game tonight. Offensively, it's an upgrade over where things were, a year ago, especially in the month of November. People don't want to hear that tonight because Georgia just got their brains beat in by Alabama. And yet, just because emotionally people want to reject that in the moment doesn't mean it's any less true.
Exactly. I wouldn't say that the Georgia receivers tonight get open. We think we had a lot of opportunities tonight. A lot of balls got batted down. So I wouldn't go that far. I think we go a little overboard when we lose, and rightfully so, 41 to 24 tonight. But I don't think it's as bad as it seemed, and sometimes it's not as good as it seemed either. So I think we all just take the famous words of Aaron Rodgers, say, just relax a little bit right now. Yes, we're upset tonight, and we got another game in 2 weeks. That's the great thing about football. You get another opportunity to play your next game, and hopefully these guys come out with the fire and passion that they should display all week.
Dylan Beasley says UGA just a sad team as always. Obviously, on a night like this, that's the way that it's going to feel like. Adrian Hill also pretty critical of Stetson Bennett. I'm just telling you right now, the one thing that I'm not going to agree with some of our commenters on is I'm just not going to trash Bennett. Bennett did not play a great game. There are a couple of picks. We knew that his first road start at a place like Tuscaloosa, Alabama was going to be a very difficult thing. I'm not trying to sugarcoat this. I'm not trying to make the loss less than it was. But some of y'all are just being too hard now on Bennett. You just are. I think you're out in front of yourself on some of the things that you're saying, and I'm not going to join you in saying that, whether you like it or not. So, and Terrence, you understand this. You played the game. This is just the way that people are just disappointed after a loss.
Exactly. I understand. I've been on that side of the coin before in my time at Georgia as well. So I get it. We are all very disappointed in our Bulldogs tonight, and just don't think we should now be. It's not time to start dumping on the players right now. Let's rally around these players and send positive vibes towards them. And we got 2 weeks to prepare for Kentucky and go out and just cheer as hard as we can for our team in the next game.
David Johnson, though, on YouTube does ask a good question. I think this is fair to bring up, that somehow, some way, Dwan Mathis earned the start week 1, and we didn't see, we saw a half of him there, and he was replaced by Stetson Bennett, and the rest after that was kind of history. David seems to be asking, well, do you go back to Mathis? Somehow he earned enough trust to be out there and start at the beginning of the season. I at least think that's a fair thing to bring up in a night in which quarterback play was at least part of the reason why you lost. More of an opportunity to see what Mathis brings to the table. I can certainly understand why somebody might want to at least bring that up as a talking point. So I'll give you a chance to respond to that. Mathis earns the week 1 start, benched in that game, hasn't played since then. Should he get a longer week now with 2 weeks to prepare for Georgia's next game against Kentucky?
You're working me in, but there's a thing that if Stetson is looking over his back every time he make a mistake, I don't think he's going to play up to his ability. I don't think any player is looking over their shoulder. They're going to make a mistake, they get snatched. So I'm not a proponent of switching the quarterbacks or anything like that during the game. Yes, I would love for Georgia to put a package in for DeJuan Mathis to use his running abilities. That's just a changeup. That gives the defense during the week to prepare for 2 different types of quarterback. And yes, Stetson can use his legs to get first down, but DeJuan is a guy who can really move and throw the football. But I would think he just started to get more reps and just get all those guys reps in, because you never know, you're 1 play away from being back on the field.
ST Panther on YouTube mentions Carson Beck. To my eyes, and I looked for him, I never saw Carson Beck tonight. I'm not entirely sure Beck traveled with the team to Tuscaloosa. I can't confirm that, but in looking for Beck tonight before the game, I did not see him. So I think that gives you an idea about how Georgia currently views his readiness one way or another for, playing in the very near future. I mean, the fact of the matter is, Terrence, look at Mac Jones for Alabama. This is a guy who waited in the wings for a while. Clearly, the experience he gained by being on the sideline, doing some of the things that he did, is helping him play right now. I don't like giving Kyle Trask credit, but it's another guy that kind of hung around the program for a while, waited for his chance to play. We see experience in the SEC at the quarterback position just kind of matter more than maybe it used to a couple of years ago. So for guys like DeJuan Mathis, who's been on campus for a year but hasn't really played very much, for a guy like Carson Beck, who just arrived, I think one of the most foolish things you can do is expect too much right now from a guy who has not been in the campus environment at a time in which you see experienced quarterbacks really being the ones that are having the most success in the SEC. I mean, I just think that's the thing you've got to be the most careful about, is acting like that somebody who just got out of high school or someone who is only himself recently medically cleared to even return back to football, the idea that he's going to step in with a Superman cape and save you and solve all your problems. I mean, I think that's just naive. And I hate to say it that way, but that's just naive. That's all there is to it.
I think so. And you think about the Mac Jones and the Kyle Trask, that they've been with their OC and their quarterback and their quarterback coach and their system for a few years now. So they understand what's going on. We bringing in a new OC, a new quarterback. So it's going to take a little time. They didn't get opportunity to go through spring. They didn't really get opportunity to go through summer. Went through a lot of Zoom calls, but they're just not different. They're just a little different than going out and getting on the field and understand the play. So, we're behind the 8 ball because we're breaking in new offensive quarterback and a new offense coordinator, where those other teams are already been solidified as who's the quarterback and who's the offensive coordinator and what they want out their players. So we are behind the 8 ball, but just don't think we should jump off the bandwagon just yet.
John Adams says that winning the East alone is not good enough when you have as much talent as Georgia does. I completely agree with that. This is not a team that's built to settle for second best in the SEC, fifth best in the country. I totally agree with you on that. But the one thing that you do, I think, have to look at is what the path of recent national champions has been. Go back to Alabama's last national championship in 2017. That was not an undefeated regular season. They got their brains beat in Jordan-Hare Stadium by Auburn. The idea that in college football, your national champion has to be this pristine, perfect, unbeaten team. That's what LSU was a year ago. It's what Clemson was in 2018. But more often than not, you're looking at national champions that themselves, especially if it's an SEC national champion, that goes through the rigors of a tough season and sometimes suffers a tough loss on the road. So the notion that Georgia's now disqualified from winning the national championship because it lost at Bryant-Denny Stadium tonight, Alabama's only lost twice in this building since 2015. This is not the measuring stick for if you win a national champion, because most national champions don't have to even come in here. I mean, at least give Alabama enough credit to say that they're very tough to beat in their home stadium. And, the fact that Georgia didn't do that somehow proves they're incapable of doing this. We've seen SEC teams lose on the road and still go on to win a national championship. Let's just keep a little bit of perspective on that.
I think so. I think we need to pump the brakes a little bit. I think, we're very emotional right now, and rightfully so that, we just lost a big game and we're expecting to come in and win. I thought and picked Georgia to win this game. That didn't happen, but I'm not going to jump off the ship right now and just say everything is a total loss. All the goals right now is still in front of us. We have to win the East first to get an opportunity to play in the SEC championship game. And so winning the East is always the first goal that Georgia set, and then the SEC championship, then the college playoff. So the East is very important that we win, so we can get an opportunity to win a national championship.
PC Cooper says, stop it, BA, but I'm not going to stop it. That stadium behind me, Alabama in 2015 lost to Ole Miss. Ole Miss, for goodness sakes. You know what they did? They want to win the national championship. I'm not telling you that Georgia's going to do that. Honestly, none of us know. What I am saying is that we will all hopefully live beyond tonight. And when we wake up tomorrow morning, we're going to feel a bit different. And 2 Saturdays from now, when Georgia plays Kentucky, we will feel a little bit different then, too. All I'm saying is just try to keep a little bit of perspective, but we'll keep taking your comments. It is the Dog Nation postgame show presented by the UGA Bookstore. My name is Brandon Adams. I'm live here in Tuscaloosa. Huge thanks to BJ Swinney, who's on the scene with me, providing some handheld light right now because for whatever reason, the lights we brought with us from Atlanta just completely burned out on us right before the show started. We may have to give him a little bit of break when Terrence is talking to drop that light so he can rest his arms here a little bit because I know that's going to make him tired after a while. Terrence Edwards is back in Georgia. We're taking your comments. You don't have to pull any punches. You can say what you want to say. You can't expect me to agree with all of it because, frankly, we're going to live to move on and play again and watch the Dogs play again. But the reason why we do this show, the reason why it exists after the game is to give you a chance to sound off and do what you want to do. And I'll also tell you this, another reason why we do this show is to tell you about our good friends there at the UGA Bookstore. Get stocked up for your UGA apparel. Get ready for the games that's ready to come. Get ready for the holiday season. Go by and see them in Athens. They're open 7 days a week. If you can't be in Athens right now, stop by the UGA Bookstore website at ugabookstore.com. Do all your shopping. Get ready to go. 47 brand, Vineyard Vines, Tommy Bahama, Nike, the coach's gear, the UGA 10 line from Peter Millar. It's the only place you can get that. UGAbookstore.com for a lot more on that. All right, let me go to Facebook and see what people are yelling at me about on Facebook. By the way, y'all never yell at Terrence. Y'all just yell at me. Y'all see, everybody likes Terrence. Nobody likes me on nights like this. But you know what? I'm fine. I'm a big boy. I can take that. James Crump says the receivers played good enough to win this game. Nobody wants to hear this, and I'm going to say it, and people laugh at me in the comment section. If you're looking for some positives to take away, I don't mean gigantic positives. I mean tiny positives. There is no doubt this receiving corps is better than it was a year ago. The Georgia that played most of last year would have come in tonight and gotten beaten even worse. I mean, I think it's important to acknowledge just how broken Georgia's offense was a year ago. And if you acknowledge that, then you can see the ways in which the Georgia offense this season, I think, is an improvement, over what it was, last season. If you're looking for one area in particular, I'm not telling you that you should go to bed feeling great about this. I'm just telling you it's true. The Georgia receiving corps is better this year than it was last year. And think about a rematch potentially taking place on a neutral side. If you're looking for a reason why that game might go a little bit different, better play from the receivers, just better overall talent at the receiver position. Terrence, that is one of the potential positives I might look at.
I think so. I mean, you look at the way Jermaine played tonight. Young freshman going into this type of environment, he played pretty well tonight. We can get George. I think schematically, we need to try to scheme, get George open more instead of just keeping him on the boundary by himself in the short side of the field. We got weapons, so I don't think this is anything like last year. We got guys out there that's able to make plays and will make plays. I mean, our top 3 receivers, Kieris and George and Jermaine is, at some point, those guys will be the top group in the league because they're all young. So it's not as bad as it seemed, like I said earlier, and it's sometimes not as good as it seems. So we can all relax and just get ready to take on Kentucky in 2 weeks.
Danny Starnes says, can you just blame the refs like everybody else? Yeah, I mean, listen, the Eric Stokes pass interference call was a total joke. That's completely ridiculous. It's an awful, awful call. Georgia had forced a 4th down, and yet the pass interference makes it possible for Alabama to score another touchdown. But Terrence, you played in this building. You're not getting a call against Alabama at Bryant-Denny Stadium. You're just not. You gotta face the team in crimson. You gotta face the team in black and white. They're talking about the Zebras when you come in here to Bryant-Denny. You just gotta know that. I mean, I'm the last one that's going to use officiating as some sort of excuse why Georgia wins, especially in a stadium like this where you know you're not going to get a call. The review on the Jermaine Burton touchdown, which at the time seemed like a pretty big deal, was a total joke. It's an obvious touchdown. It's completely obvious anybody looked at it. Yet they still reviewed the thing for 90 seconds because in Tuscaloosa, you never really know what you're going to get. So, yeah, the Eric Stokes pass interference, some people want to point to, was it Waddle who may have pushed down Tyson Campbell on one of his long pass plays here today. I mean, there's a lot of that kind of stuff that I think you could point to. I'm not happy about it, but I'm also the last one that's going to blame the officiating because when you come into this building, you know how it's going to go.
I think when you play Alabama, period, you know how it's going to go because we have gotten some not so good calls in our favor the last three times that we played them. So going into that stadium that you're not going to get the call or it's going to go against us. That Eric Stokes PI was the same. Should have been called a penalty against Sartain against Jordan Pickens. There's a lot of hand fighting. So if you're going to call it one way, you got to call it other. I don't think either one of them was PI, and that gave Alabama 7 points where we should have held them to 3. And like those plays that we got to make, and that's another turning point in the game. That if we just stop them right there, you don't know what can happen.
I mentioned the Jermaine Burton touchdown. Let me go ahead and do this. Listen. At the time, that was about the happiest we were all night long. So let's make Jermaine Burton our Marco's Pizza moment of the game. Listen, a lot of sports on TV this weekend, whether it be baseball or football or everything else. And Marco's Pizza pairs great with that because it's real, authentic Italian pizza made the Italian way. It's great savings there as well. It's a Dog Nation game day favorite. All the great savings. You can go to Marcos.com, the Marcos app, and find out all the great deals they have for you. And we'll congratulate Jermaine Burton, his touchdown with less than a minute to go in the second quarter that gave Georgia lead going into halftime. We'll call that our Marco's Pizza moment of the game. Make sure you check out Marcos.com or the Marcos app as you get settled in to watch some pro football on Sunday or a big baseball game tomorrow night. Marco's Pizza will certainly go great with that. And once again, Terrence, people don't want to hear this, but if you're looking for one of the real dynamic playmakers the rest of the season for Georgia, as much as he was targeted tonight, all the creative ways Georgia attempted to use him, I think Jermaine Burton, a guy that you know very well, is certainly someone that I think you can expect to see a lot more heavily involved in the Georgia offense the rest of the season to come.
I think so. Has done a great job for a young guy that's playing his third college game. There's a lot of things that I will talk to him about this week that I think he could do better. That first touchdown, I think he's talented enough that he can make that catch. It was a little off schedule throw. It was behind him. He was diving trying to catch. So I think that's plays that he can make to help his team. But overall, for a guy who's playing his third or fourth college football game, I think he's playing well.
Kerry Kinsey on YouTube says, y'all are the biggest apologists ever tonight. If you don't call out the poor quarterback play, you're being a homer. No one's saying that Stetson Bennett played a good game necessarily. No one's saying that he wasn't part of the reason why Georgia lost. Yet I'm also going to acknowledge, we had somebody in the comment section a moment ago mention Jamie Newman opting out and all the things that's happened for Georgia quarterbacks over the course of the last few months. I'm going to try to keep this in perspective and say, listen, there's a very good chance that Georgia would have already lost another game this season had it not been for Stetson Bennett. So you can blame him for part of what happened tonight, but you also have to look at the way that he came in and saved Georgia's bacon against Arkansas, a team, by the way, that's turned out to be a little bit better than maybe we first thought when the season began, and the fact that Stetson played at a pretty high level against Auburn and Tennessee. See, I think it's important to mention all of that. You want to blame Bennett for some of the stuff that went on tonight? Obviously, he's a big boy. He can take that, and I can take you being mad at me that I'm not doing it as much as you want me to. But I'm not going to act like the only down of football that Bennett's played all season long is what happened behind me at Bryant-Denny. There's a lot more to the story than that, and I do think you've got to be able to speak about both the good and the bad, and there's a reason why Bennett was the starting quarterback tonight, and there's the reason why Kirby Smart never looked to replace him, and it's based on what Bennett had done over the course of the last 2.5 games.
I think so. I'm not going to sit here and say he played his best game, and by far he didn't play it. But I don't think he was he also wasn't the biggest problem. Those two interceptions were big that changed the momentum of the game. And I know he would go back and look at that and understand that he can't make, especially that third one, he can't make that play to, I don't know where he was throwing the ball in this type of situation. You're still in the game at that point. So, yes, Stetson didn't play his best game tonight, but I'm not ready to counsel him and bring in whoever else to lead his team. I think that he has earned the right to play against Kentucky and be the starter against Kentucky.
Marcos Burgos says it sure has taken forever for Kirby's press conference. Is it really not started yet? It is. That's a little late if it truly hasn't started yet. But when it does start, I mean, for those of you who just want fire and brimstone about everything that happened tonight, you're not getting that from Kirby either. He's not going to give that to you. He's not going to peel paint off the walls in his press conference. He's going to talk about regrouping and getting ready for Kentucky. You don't want to hear that tonight, but 2 weeks from now, that's what you're going to want Georgia to do. I mean, let's just be honest about that. Let's see what else is going on. Young Coke says that Todd wants JT. JT fits Monken's offense perfectly. That may be the case, but I think that people who try to pin the savior hopes on JT Daniels, Terrence, I think they're also potentially making a little bit of a mistake there as well. I mean, I'm a Georgia fan. I hope to get a chance to see JT Daniels at some point. Obviously, it was very exciting when a former five-star quarterback transferred to Georgia. But the notion that Daniels, who's fresh off an injury, who, I mean, let's just be honest here, did not have a great season the 1 year starting at USC. The idea that he's going to put a Superman cape on his back, step on the field, and all the Georgia's offensive problems are going to be magically solved. Anybody who sells you on that or attempts to sell you on that is honestly selling you a little bit of a bill of goods. Daniels may play well, but the transition, to him potentially playing quarterback is not going to be a seamless one necessarily either. Just be careful putting too many expectations on him. It's the oldest story in the world. The backup quarterback who hasn't played yet, all of a sudden, that's going to be the guy that fixes everything. Be careful being too quick to assume that.
I think so. I've watched JT Daniels in high school, and I thought he was very talented. Watched him as a freshman at USC, and think he has all the skills. But just to say that he fits his system, we don't know that because we haven't seen him play. I think he would be a good quarterback. I hope he gets the opportunity to play at some point so we can see his skill set live. But like I said, I think there's more than meets the eye with him right now. I think he's not healthy. He's not cleared. And if he's not ready to go, continue to play Stetson and let's see what we can do. I mean, we should be able to finish out this East and win these games. And hopefully JT Daniels at some point gets the opportunity so we can see him play. But Stetson right now has earned the right to continue playing quarterback for us.
Joshua Gibbs says we won't win another national championship or SEC championship with our current quarterback play. We need to hope that Brock Vandagriff's the answer. And I do kind of understand that people are a little bit frustrated that right now you see like high-level, dynamic quarterback play and a lot of places in the SEC and a lot of places in college football. And it seems like Georgia's a step behind that. I won't deny that. I believe that's been true for more than just certainly tonight. That's been the case. But Georgia's on its way trying to work its way out of that. That's why Todd Monken is here, and that's why whether it be bringing in Brock Vandagriff for the class of 2021 or whatever else, that's not necessarily going to be an immediate fix. I mean, we spent a lot of time on Dog Nation Daily going back weeks ago, saying that we still expected this to be a work in progress. Well, offensively tonight, another example of this truly being a work in progress. Here's a little bit of a happier note, though, Terrence. Jimmy Miller pointing out that Clemson beat up on Georgia Tech today by the tune of 73-7. So at least that's something to feel a little bit better about, right?
Exactly. I mean, I watched about the first half of that game, and I think they could have put up 100 points if they wanted to today. That Clemson offense is very dynamic.
J.C. Cole says, I'm making excuses for Stetson Bennett. I'm really not. I mean, you can call today what it was. You can be very honest about that. Who do I expect to start the Kentucky game? I expect it to probably be Stetson Bennett. And, you may not want that to be true, but that's kind of what I expect it to probably be on the basis of the fact that Dwan Mathis is still inexperienced. Carson Beck is still totally inexperienced. And frankly, I think JT Daniels is probably still hurt. I mean, so you can be furious with Stetson Bennett and you can want to replace him, but you have to ask yourself the question, replace him with whom? Because if you think that JT Daniels is the savior of Georgia football, my assumption right now is that Daniels, at least to some degree, is probably still hurt. Go ahead, Terrence. I'm sorry.
I think so, too. I just think Kirby's going to put the best quarterback on the field to play right now. And I think he thinks and knows Stetson gives us the best opportunity to win right now. So once he makes that quarterback change, or JT Daniels get completely healthy, then I think we're going to continue to see Stetson. Hopefully, Dewan gets another opportunity to showcase his talent. But right now, I think he's going to continue to roll with Stetson.
Somebody says, Josh Gillum says, our offense ain't explosive right now because of the quarterback, nothing else. But, I mean, go back and look at how many points Georgia scored in SEC play a year ago. They averaged fewer than 20 points a game against SEC opponents a year ago. This offense is more explosive than it was a season ago. Is it explosive to win the national championship? It may not be. I can't do anything about that if it's not. But I'm not going to allow you to pretend like it's not more explosive now than it was most of last season. Go back and look at the total number of games last year that Georgia scored fewer points than it did tonight, or fewer points than it scored against Tennessee, or fewer points than it scored even against Auburn, where it only scored 27 points. There were a lot of games a year ago that Georgia couldn't scratch 27 on an empty field. I mean, let's just be honest that it may not be as explosive as the Ohio States eventually be, and Clemson is right now, or even certainly Alabama was tonight. But don't act like it's not more explosive than it was a year ago. I mean, it's at least a step in the right direction.
Yes, I think so. I mean, 24 points against Alabama in the first half. I think nobody would have a complaint about that. We just did not finish the game. We didn't capitalize. We turned the ball over. So if you're going to turn the ball over against this type of team, this type of offense, this was going to happen. 41-24 game. So we can't make those mistakes. Alabama didn't make any mistakes tonight besides that one interception on the first play. So if we turn the ball over, this is what's going to happen.
James Key, I think he asked a fair question. This is a fair question, totally fair. He says, what happened to the air raid offense we were supposed to have? And, Terrence, I don't mind somebody asking, is Todd Monken having enough of an impact on what Georgia's doing right now? As I said, I think that's a fair question. I will say that I think that I have seen enough through 4 games to say that Monken is an upgrade over James Coley. It remains to be seen if it's enough to get Georgia to where it wants to go this season when national championship ought to be a realistic goal. That remains to be seen. And if a Georgia fan wants to say, hey, I'd like to see, more of an impact from Todd Monken, it's certainly fair to ask it. What have you thought you've seen from Monken? And are you seeing concepts that are an upgrade over what you saw a year ago?
Yeah, if you go back and review some of the content that we had earlier, didn't call this the air raid. So that was one of the things that people kept calling it. It was an air raid error. I didn't think it was. Mississippi State is an air raid. That's what you consider air raid. Monken is a very versatile OC that uses offense for whatever talent he had, because he has had 2,000-yard tailbacks at one time. He's never had 2,000-yard receivers. So I don't consider his offense an air raid. It's very versatile, but it's not an air raid.
Yeah, so I think that's a very interesting piece of analysis. All right, here's what we're going to try to do. I'm going to try to run through a bunch of comments. I want to talk about some of the other stuff that happened in the SEC today. I want to address the schedule change for Georgia, why I think it might help the dogs here a little bit. We're going to roll through all of this. Let's see if we can do a bunch of these. Tristan J says the offense is better, for 2 quarters. Yeah, Georgia did run out of gas in the second half. I won't deny that. Ryan Hirschberger says Kendall Milton is a beast for sure. If you're looking at a bright spot, Terrence, Kendall Milton, boy, I think that Georgia is fairly deep at the running back spot, but man, Milton looks like he has a bright future. I think that almost certainly everybody would acknowledge that's at least a brief bright spot for tonight.
I think so, and I got to get some love to Cook tonight. Everyone is ready to throw him out, not put him back on the field, but he's one of the better players on the field tonight for us, especially offensively.
Sean 4EZ says the quarterback doesn't have the height or the arm for the air raid. I don't know about that. Texas Tech, how many short quarterbacks they have over the years in the Mike Leach era? Leach era. It seems like they all had all kinds of short quarterbacks. Not all of them had big arms. That seems to be one of the things that the air raid's pretty good with. Bobby Ivester says turnovers with a difference, big point swing because of that, and it's true. And the one that changes everything is, on the heels of the big 90-yard, touchdown play, Georgia comes back and, Bennett throws the interception there. This is early third quarter. That leads to another Alabama score, and everything was different after that. No one's going to deny those turnovers hurt Georgia. People will say that Bennett had made a couple of turnover-worthy throws against Tennessee, balls that could have been picked tonight they were. That's, if you're looking for the turning point when things went sour, that's clearly it. Alabama hits the big offensive play and comes right back gets the interception and puts points on the board after the interception, there's no doubt that changed everything.
It did. That was one of the biggest turning points of the game right there. We they hit the 91 yard to make it, I think, 27-24, if I'm not mistaken. And we still in the game. They just took the momentum. But if you want to be where you want to be, if you want to be a championship caliber team, you gotta go and strike back. And those interceptions was really deadly tonight and killed our opportunity to win.
Larry Bowleyjack II says, BA, talk about when we stopped running ball down Bama's throat. Terrence, obviously I can't say this for sure, but I think one of the pressure, it's same as LSU a year ago, that they put a lot of pressure on you to match their big plays. And if you're the play caller, if you're the head coach, that's in the back of your mind that Alabama's hitting those explosives. And I think that you probably feel the pressure to match those. If I had to guess, for the people who felt like Georgia went away from the run a little too much, I mean, I think that's what it kind of comes down to. In that third down situation, when you're facing that choice, you end up wanting to throw the football because you're afraid to give the football back to them.
I think so. In the first half, if you look, our third down was either third down 5 or less. So we had an opportunity to do a run pass option. We could run it or throw it. So in the second half, we stayed in more third and long. So that creates worse opportunity for us because of Stetson height. He got some of the balls knocked down, and we just didn't play well in the second half. So the running game was very successful tonight, and I think we did abandon it a little too early to try to match them, but we should have stuck with our game plan a little bit longer. But that was a bright spot. The running game tonight was a bright spot that we can look and like this something that we can hang our hat on until we get that quote-unquote the quarterback everyone wants.
Travis Joyner says BA's just drinking the Kool-Aid if he thinks Stetson Bennett can do anything more than just win the East. Honestly, I don't know, what the threshold of possibility is. I'm not certainly going to tell you that there's a national championship coming or an SEC championship. I can't promise you that's on the horizon. What I can tell you is you got to have somebody at quarterback right now, and I think it's pretty obvious that Bennett has distanced himself from the other guys in this roster right now. That's the thing that you're drinking the Kool-Aid. Y'all act like I'm the one that's trying to sugarcoat things. Some of y'all are trying to paint too rosy a picture of the idea that there's somebody just waiting in the wings to sort of step in here and, save the day. I'm not quite sure at the moment, either because of injury or inexperience or whatever else. I'm not quite sure at the moment that guy is walking through the door. But maybe by the time you get to a potential rematch in December, that has changed. Let me also read this. This is from Mr. Hawkins, Terrence, who says, how many good UGA defenses are we going to waste waiting for the quarterback situation to improve? That's certainly fair. Defenses have been ahead of the Georgia offense now for a while. But, Terrence, we said this to start the show. I think we've all got to just assume that when you have a great defense battling against a great offense, and Alabama is a great offense, I mean, how many of these matchups do we have to see before we just know that the great offense is going to have the advantage against the great defense? And I don't have any – I have tons of respect for the Georgia defense, but the sport right now just favors the top offense over the top defense.
Oh, I think so. That's what people want to see. I don't think anyone want to see do you remember the SEC championship game or the national championship game when it was 9-6, Alabama over LSU? I don't think anyone wants to see that type of game anymore. They want to see points. So I understand the rules that they implied and implemented to make it's harder on defenses to play defense. So you got to have a great offense now. Offense is your offense and defense. So we got to be able to score with Bama. Hopefully next time we get opportunity to play them.
Michael Clayton says, BA, you got to face it. Stetson Bennett's just not going to get us to a national championship. And I'm here to tell you, he may not. But the answer is not which quarterback on the Georgia roster is going to get Georgia to a national championship. There may not be anybody on this current roster who's going to do that, as much as it pains me to say. The real question is, who is the best option of the quarterbacks that are available? And I think Kirby Smart is showing you over the course of the last couple of weeks that for now, he still views that to be Bennett. Maybe the next couple of weeks magically will lead to more health for JT Daniels. Maybe that happens. But I'm going to have to see something to believe that's on the horizon, because as it stands right now, I'm just not quite so sure. All right, let me do this, Terrence. Let me kind of update people on the schedule change. I want to get a couple thoughts from you. We're kind of just a few minutes away from wrapping things up from Tuscaloosa. I know people are probably tired of all this after a little while. It's the Dog Nation post-game show. It's presented by the UGA Bookstore, UGAbookstore.com. I promise there'll be a day in the future where you're happy again, looking forward to Georgia football again. And when you are, you're going to want to have some nice-looking apparel to put on your body for that. So UGAbookstore.com, the place to go for all that. All those great brands right down there on the first floor. We're there each and every home game. We've been doing it for 5 years. We love the UGA Bookstore. We're proud to have them bring the Dog Nation post-game show here to us this season, including when we're in Tuscaloosa right now. All right, here is the schedule change for Georgia. This upcoming Saturday, and we'll show this to you on the screen. The upcoming Saturday was supposed to be the Kentucky game. That's not going to be the case. This now becomes a bye week for Georgia, going to Kentucky next week. All of this kind of brought about by Florida's ongoing coronavirus situation. By the way, Florida coach Dan Mullen has now announced that he has tested positive for the coronavirus. They've had as many as 19, if not more, Florida players dealing with this. So Florida looking at a situation where in all likelihood they're not able to play this upcoming Saturday. That means the Missouri game that Florida was supposed to play gets moved to October 31st. The SEC, trying to keep some schedule equity here, says, okay, we'll move Georgia back there too. And some Georgia fans were initially frustrated about, well, here's Georgia doing a scheduling favor for another one of its rivals. But Terrence, hear me out on this for a second and tell me if you agree. If you look at a lot of the stats over the course of years, teams the week after Alabama, there's a little bit of a tough deal, kind of get right back on the saddle again after playing what's typically, I don't think this Alabama team is quite as physical as previous teams have been, but the week after Alabama is not always a great week for people. If you look statistically for Georgia, next week Georgia was going to be against Kentucky, trying to do something he had never done in the Kirby Smart era, which is beat SEC opponents on 5 consecutive Saturdays, or even, of course, that came to an end tonight with Georgia losing, but it's a long stretch of 5 straight games to start a year. I think Kentucky's actually proven to be a little bit better team than maybe some people might have realized. We'll talk about their, blowout win over Tennessee today. I actually think this bye week coming where it does may not be the worst thing for Georgia. Georgia actually does not typically have, a very sterling record going to buys as it is. So, taking this break now, getting a game against Kentucky 2 weeks from now, and then getting ready for Florida after that, hopefully with a little bit more firm footing for those who want to see the quarterback position more, heavily evaluated. That gives you 2 weeks worth of practice and another game to figure that out before Florida. And I do expect that conversation to be ongoing. Georgia fans, I think, were initially a little frustrated by this, Terrence, but I'm actually not so sure. It's not a halfway decent thing to go ahead and take the week off now.
I think so. So if everyone really wants to see JT Daniels play, his next week against Kentucky made it be that week. He gets a whole week, 2 weeks of getting healthy, understanding the playbook, getting his comfort level up even more, getting the coach's comfort level up even more with his ability to perform. So this may be that week that we need. For me, coming off a loss, I would want to play the next week just to get that stink, that feeling off me. But now you got to sit on it for 2 weeks. You got to talk about it with reporters now for 2 weeks. So it could go both ways. Me personally, I would want to get back out and play and try to get a win, try to feel a little bit better, because these 2 weeks is going to be probably some sombering times for these kids right now.
I think one of the things that kind of frustrates Georgia fans is now clearly after 9, Georgia's got its own problems. But for Florida, who's been awful defensively, the fact they'll get another week off would seem to be, to some Georgia fans, more time for Florida to try to figure out what's been a problem for the Gators defensively thus far this season. So at least you keep that in your mind. But the truth is, if Georgia needs a bye week to beat Florida and they got more problems than I want to admit anyway. So, from that standpoint, and listen, as a former player, I totally understand where you're coming from. Not me as a former player, but you as a former player. The idea that your pride's at stake after getting beaten up tonight, you want to hop back on that horse as quick as you can. I'm not surprised to hear you say that these guys, when they do finally get a chance to go out there and play again, they are likely to be chomping at the bit.
Oh, I think so. They'll be fresh, rejuvenated, and they should be very upset because, like I said, they're going to hear about this for the next 2 weeks, about this game or what happened. I'm sure they're going to get tired of talking about this game. They're trying to move on to the next game. So they're going to have a whole 2 weeks to be asked about this, and they're going to try to get their focus on Kentucky, and reporters are probably going to ask them about this Alabama game. So that's one part why I would want to go ahead and play. Let's get to the next game so we can put this game behind us.
By the way, as you saw on your screen, Georgia will be on the road at Missouri after the Florida game, and then not returning back home again on November 21st against Mississippi State. Then it's at South Carolina, home again against Vanderbilt, assuming the Vanderbilt's playing football by then, to close out the regular season there. So a long stretch before Georgia returns back between the hedges again. And listen, a lot of football left to be played. On paper, it seems like in some respects the Georgia schedule is going to get easier at some point. But Terrence, based on what you saw tonight, it's obvious that Georgia's still got plenty to work on. No one's going to pretend otherwise here. That when you make the mistakes that Georgia made tonight, and some of the mistakes it was lucky to overcome, last week against Tennessee, that you really can't take any game against any opponent for granted, unfortunately.
Oh, you can't, especially not in this league, because anyone can beat you. So if we don't take this next game against Kentucky very seriously and get this and put this one behind us, they would beat us. I mean, if you're looking at them right now, they're probably leading the nation in interceptions. So they're a very ball hawking type team, very dangerous team. So we got to put this one behind us very quick and get our attention to Kentucky. And I know it's going to be 2 weeks from now, but if you just go in and poke and mope about this game, Kentucky can sneak up on you in 2 weeks.
By the way, G. Grace, Bama Boy, one of our Alabama fans who checks in the show, he's obviously happy tonight, and congratulations to him. His team does get a big win tonight in the SEC. That's the way it goes. When you win, you deserve to celebrate. When you lose, you're disappointed. And pretty clearly, Alabama fans all throughout Tuscaloosa tonight going to be happy and celebrating all of this. When Jimmy Miller says Georgia will be okay despite losing tonight, I think he's right about that. Terrence, let's also talk about some of the other things that happened in the SEC today here, and we'll kind of throw some of the big headlines from the weekend on the screen. Auburn loses in upset fashion at South Carolina. Tigers had a lead here in this one early, but Gamecocks come roaring back. So it's a night where Georgia has some problems, but it's been a season of problems thus far for Auburn, hasn't it, Terrence? This is a Gus Malzahn regime right now that's got a bunch of questions it needs to try to answer.
I think Gus has been on the hot seat more than any coach in the SEC. 1 year he's on the hot seat. Next year he goes and wins or play for the national championship. So I think he is really on the hot seat this year, and he really have to finish strong probably to keep his job.
Texas A&M stayed hot at Starkville. They win by a couple of touchdowns on the road. All of a sudden, the schedule really eases up for them. So after an ugly couple of weeks to start the season, game closer against Vanderbilt than it should have been, blowout loss to Alabama, suddenly you start thinking about Texas A&M, maybe figuring some things out here after winning at Mississippi State. And how about Sam Pittman, the Arkansas Razorbacks, winning at home against Ole Miss? Rebels were very proud of themselves for keeping it close with Alabama last week in Oxford, and they go on the road and lose to Sam Pittman. All of a sudden, the Arkansas win, Terrence, looks like the best win Georgia's had all season long.
Exactly. I think people now got to really give Sam Pittman and his staff some credit. I mean, I think we was very disappointed of how our dogs played, but we got to give credit to Arkansas. Maybe they made it tougher on us and tougher than we even knew it would be.
And the other thing that's a headline from this weekend is the way that Kentucky jumped all over Tennessee, turning Jerry Garantano over a couple of times. Tennessee makes a quarterback change in this game. When you see Kentucky just really wallop the Vols, the team that Georgia just beat a week ago, I mean, how much does that cause you to take a closer look at what's going to happen against Kentucky when the Dogs go to Lexington on Halloween 2 weeks from now?
I don't take any of these teams for granted. I played in this league, and I understand that you could be beat on any given Saturday if you don't bring your A game. And Tennessee didn't bring their A game today, and Kentucky jumped on them, and it was a very impressive victory because a lot of people had Tennessee challenging for the East this year. So give Kentucky all the kudos because they played a great game today.
All right, it's the middle of the night. I'm tired of people yelling at me, and frankly, I just want to go to bed. You have a final thought? I mean, Terrence, where does Georgia go from here?
We can only go up. I think we got a week to really get better at the things that we didn't do well tonight. Communication in the back end on the secondary. Stetson got a whole 2 weeks to really understand and break down his play that he can't make. JT Daniels, we don't know much about. We don't know much about his status. So he got 2 weeks to get healthy with no football, and maybe he gets the opportunity in 2 weeks. But overall, we just got to, take our lickings and man up, look at the film, get better, get ready for Kentucky in 2 weeks.
The Green Soldier on YouTube says, I'm tired of seeing so much put into the defense to have the same result year after year. Kirby has to let go of the idea that an elite defense can get it done. Not anymore. I think the Green Soldier, for the most part, is right about that. That when Georgia finally gets over the hump, it's going to be because it creates an offense that's as explosive as the one you saw on the other sideline tonight. I don't deny that. I don't deny that at all. Facebook comments still rolling in, but we'll have more time all next week to read those. Listen, it ain't fun, y'all. This is awful. I mean, just awful. I'm disappointed. I know you all are as well. But thanks for letting us talk to you about it tonight, Terrence. Thanks to you for giving some wisdom to us and some perspective and some calming influence. Honestly, there are a lot of folks who needed a little bit of that tonight. So I appreciate you keeping a level head about you all night long. And thanks for being here, a part of our Dog Nation post game show presented by the UGA Bookstore.
Thank you so much. And Dog fans, I am as disappointed as the Nets, but I understand we have another game to play. This game didn't go our way, but we got more football to play.
All right, so y'all can keep beating me up in the comment section if you want to, but I'm going to go to bed. I'll see you Monday for Dog Nation Daily. We'll figure out where Georgia goes from here, and we'll lick our wounds a little bit more after another loss to the Alabama Crimson Tide, unfortunately. I do appreciate you being here on the UGA Bookstore. Check out the good stories, not good news, but good coverage of what happened in Tuscaloosa at dognation.com. The conversation will remain ongoing at the forum at forum.dognation.com as well. And as I said before, I will see you Monday, 10 a.m. for Dog Nation Daily. Y'all have as good a weekend as you can have, and we'll talk